Nau mai te rā, haere rā te pō, toia e tamanui te rā, ngā māramatanga kia whiti ai te rā, ki runga i tā tātou kaupapa i ki ana ko Party People. Haumea huie, tai kie. Kia ora Mihingarangi Forbes. This is Party People, of course funded by the Public Interest Journalism Fund. It's Tuesday the 16th of November and I'm joined by our expert panel of political modellers. They've been processing all the data and they've been crunching all the numbers. They are, of course, Professor Tauhenare and Dr. Shane Te Pou. Tēnā kōrua.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Would you like to be called that?
Doctor? No,
not really.
DJ Shane Te Pou. That's my ultimate gig. DJ Shane Te Pou. That'd be my ultimate gig.
How 80s is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
best years of my life, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just call me bro.
Okay then, bro. 181 years ago, we became a colony with the British Empire. We severed our links to Australia, and we became known as New Ulster, New Munster, and New Leinster. The North, the South, and the Stewart Islands. The Māori Party wants us to be called Aotearoa. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm an Aotearoa person.
Yeah.
And here's the interesting thing: New Munster, New Ulster, New Leinster. You would have thought that they were New Pommy, but they're not. They're actually Irish names for counties in Ireland.
I'd rather be aligned to the Irish than the Dutch, to be honest. But
yeah,
Aotearoa,
I'd rather be aligned to Māori.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone's going to, because names are so important,
Yes,
I'm sure someone's going to send us a note about what they think and whether we've got that wrong. But so Aotearoa is the Māori Party's pick for Aotearoa. The South Island, Ngāi Tahu, have suggested Te Waipounamu.
Well, Te Waipounamu is the South Island, but, you know, we're bigger than that. But also, it's not just about the name, and I'm a big fan of Aotearoa, and I think it's only a matter of time before it changes. It might be hyphenated.
Aotearoa New Zealand.
It might be hyphenated. But I think it's only a matter of time, but, you know, Te Waipounamu is a geographical area, and Ngāi Tahu leadership ought to get behind the name Aotearoa because it's about a consciousness, it's about who we are as modern Aotearoa New Zealand and who we aspire to be.
So staying with the government theme, 181 years later, let's take a look at the latest polls. Very excited when I watched this poll because I knew that you guys were going to be sitting at home crunching the numbers and doing all the analysis. So it's the One News Colmar Brunton poll. The Labour government is still very strong, 41%, but down 2. Both National and the Greens up 1 or 2, and the ACT Party maintaining that impressive 14%. Shane, your analysis of those numbers?
The Prime Minister will be quietly relieved. Of course, we're talking about coalitions. The Labour and Greens still have a very healthy coalition lead. Not good for the National Party. The worst 2 months. You've got to admit, even Toe would agree, this is the worst 2 months for this is the worst 2 months for the government. You would think that National Party would have taken greater advantage of it. It's not shown in the numbers. But actually, the biggest loser, I reckon, of the night was Bridges, because I think he was preparing a bit of a challenge, a bit of a run. But when he's lower in population than the current leader of opposition, that says something about him and the lack of support that he has. It's
been a very hairy start today, I've got to say, you two, very combative. So let's go to you now, Tau. Labour would take the 53 seats as if they had the 53 seats on their own with the Greens 12, Māori Party just 1, while National and the ACT Party just 54 between them. What's your analysis of the numbers?
Another poll that means diddly squat to anybody.
Have polls meant anything to you ever?
It doesn't mean anything. We're at least
Isn't
2
that what
years
you
out
say
to
when
an
they don't
election.
fall your way?
Hey?
Isn't that what people say when they don't fall your way? Polls.
Oh, I'm a bit like Bolger, bugger the polls. You know, I just think that they are a snapshot of those that get counted, who are lucky enough to be contacted on the mobile.
So do you think that actually the National Party numbers are higher?
No, hell no, they're not high. You know, they should have shown Judith the door ages ago. But who have they got? They've got Bridges, who wants to but won't be. They've got Luxon, who other people want him. Does he want to be the leader? I don't know. Nobody knows about him. Look, the fact of the matter is that Labour are still on the roll. They are still the government by a large number of people. Here's the thing. At the next election, it's going to get really hairy.
Yeah.
Where Labour may need the Greens to govern, and it will show how strong the Greens are at the next election.
Does a pandemic help or does it work against a government that's in power?
In a way, I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It helped them because a lot of the stuff was taken off the TV, and we've only had the pandemic. But again, it's given the Labour government the opportunity to work behind the scenes, like the Māori Health Authority, like Three Waters, like, all of that stuff is still going on. It's just that we don't see any of it.
Let's go to the preferred leader. So the PM still on 39, but not as high as she has been in the past. So I'm going to ask you about that question. But secondly, David Seymour weighing in at 14%, well ahead of the National Party Judith Collins, who's just on 5%. So start with, is it a worry for the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern that she's not as preferred as previous polls? Yeah,
look, they will be concerned that the numbers are slipping, but as I said, they will be relieved. I expected worse, and I think some of them expected worse. I think that David Seymour's popularity is because the National Party is unpopular, and I think that he's getting some of their vote and some of their support. And he really is playing to that quite right perspective, not only economically right, but socially right, the groundswell people, etc. I think that he'll continue to rise, but sooner or later that will dissipate. And I don't think he'll leave with those type of numbers going into the next election.
One of the interesting who just popped up was, just behind his leader is Christopher Luxon at 4%. Simon Bridges has dropped right off. Has Christopher Luxon got what it takes to move the party to, the Marai's top table?
Well, he won't move the party to the centre, and that's where National Party gains ground. He will continue to move them to the right, particularly socially. He's got that quite fundamentalist perspective that really we haven't got to know yet. And the other thing is that, remember, the last time they experimented with someone who didn't have experience, it was an absolute disaster, and they're worried about the Todd Miller effect on Luxton.
Okay, well, let's just talk about Simon Bridges, because he got rolled over a bad poll. When does the National Party move on this 5%?
Well, like Shane says, the whole thing about National is that it does best when it has the middle ground, and if you keep pushing them right of centre, and even they think that it's cool to be right of centre because they're now in a scrap with ACT. With regards to the Prime Minister, Jacinda, she's been a victim of her own success, because that's all we've ever seen in the last, say, 2 years is her on the goggle box, in front of the media about the pandemic. Now it's sort of, the wheels are a wee bit wobbly. She's getting a bit wobbly as well. It's really interesting for somebody to lead the National Party. They need somebody in the centre that can play both sides, that can be a bit of a lefty and be a bit of a righty. But a bit like Key. Key was really good at playing both sides, right down the middle. And that's why people liked him, because he was a personable person.
Is this, is the political spectrum changing when we're starting to see 14% with, the ACT Party? What do you think?
It worries me that there's at least a core 5 to 7% of the ultra right who back David Seymour. That worries me. That now we're looking at a scrap not between left and right, but we're looking at a scrap between right and right. Yeah. Just to gain that momentum to actually try and have a go at the left. So it's
New Zealand First back at 3%. What do you make of that?
I think they'll be buoyed by that. Let's see what the trends, how the trends go with them. It's really interesting that when Winston sort of has a bit of a profile, his numbers drop a bit, and when he doesn't, his number rise a bit. But they'll be buoyed by that. I tell you, in terms of people like parties like New Zealand First and ACT, where polls count, fundraising.
I can't remember party people last year, but did either of you write off New Zealand First?
I think we were too scared to, okay. and I'd be too scared to write Winston off again. 3%, and they're not even in Parliament. Māori Party's in Parliament, and they dropped one.
Yeah.
I did about 3 weeks out suggest that Northland was gone and that Willow Jean would come up the middle. and she did. I did predict that.
Yeah, but look who was running.
But you can't write off Winston. You know, they say that a souffle doesn't rise twice as safe.
But they do need a seat. They do need a seat. So what would they be looking at?
Well, they're not going to win a seat.
No, they're not going to win a seat.
So then are they even in the running?
And they're not going to win a seat. And they are in the running because I think there's plenty of room for wedge politics, and that is Winston's game.
Kapai. Let's look at COVID as it's happened over the week. So boosters coming in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
The country could move to the traffic light system earlier, but we have to wait and see till the end of the month. Last week we talked about the government's objection to hand over Māori data to Māori health organisations, and this week, another New Zealand first, that might be a political move. Matua Shane Jones has come out swinging at Dr Bloomfield, saying he's pitting Māori against Māori. Tau, it's the two giant titans, Ngāi Tahu and Waipareira. What's going on there?
Oh yeah, I think to be fair to Ngāi Tahu, they have their own game plan in terms of health, in terms of education, reo, whatever. And this is, part of it is about rangatiratanga, about Ngāi Tahu's rangatiratanga. But then it's also about, hey, the media tried to make out that Ngāi Tahu were the ones that were blocking this, and they weren't. They had some issues, and they put that on the table. And so it wasn't, the big bad person wasn't Ngāi Tahu. In terms of where everything's going, I'm just sad that Waipareira has to spend another 200k getting some information. People saying, oh, well, it's private information. It's easy to put in place some rules and regulations whereby that information is tapu.
Shane Jones also says that the Māori ministers are letting Bloomfield have too much power. Is he right?
Well, actually, look at Willie Jackson's very strong language, Andrew Little's very strong language. All due respect to my good friend Shane Jones, he understands better than anyone how the State Sector Act rules. It's not as if the ministers can reach in, direct the Director of Health to do what they want him to do. The State Sector Act forbids him to do that, and Shane needs to know that, and he does know that.
So what's the right thing for this government to do in terms of that Māori data now?
I personally think it needs to be handed over. I think it's for the better good of our people. You know, if Ngāi Tahu have got an issue,
save
and Tau is right.
$200,000.
But save the $200,000.
$200,000. Imagine what that could go towards.
Also, it's about the greater good, and we all do agree that the greater good is vaccination and increasing those vaccination rates. I would rather have a scrap in the privacy tribunal than see more of our whānau die.
Our tamariki, well, our younger kids going back to Kura Apopo in Auckland, in Tāmaki Makaurau. Last day for teachers to begin that vaccination plan. It's been interesting. So there was a lot of protest early on and threats that would have lots of teachers not turning up. What do you make? I think it's something like 0.2% of teachers who haven't begun their vaccination.
Well, as I've said before, I'm not a fan of vaccine mandates. I think what we've done by creating vaccine mandates is created another class of people, and we've put them aside. You know, in Austria, at the moment, there is a rule being brought in that if you're not vaccinated, you get locked down. You know, that's really draconian sort of... But
what do you do? What do you do when there's a threat that teachers didn't want to get vaccinated and we've got these kids to look after?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that. And I mean, my moko's not going back to school tomorrow, that's for sure. I mean, you know what I would do? I'd say bugger the school for the rest of the year. Turn it off and we'll start again next year.
What do you do when you've got whānau that need to get back to work?
They've got to get back to work. I have real sympathy with tauas coming from mandates, but I think the fact is they work. On an international scale, our mandates are pretty mild compared to Australia, compared to Europe. And I tell you what, as we enter into winter up in Europe, I think the mandates will be harsher. I think there'll be further lockdowns. And this fallacy that people are putting around that the rest of the world is returning to normal is teka. The rest of the world is not returning to normal. The phase that we're in and the phase the rest of the world in is the new normal.
Do you think the kaiako mandates have been helpful to encourage the teaching staff to get mandated?
Absolutely, because the numbers have risen, and I don't think that's by accident. I think that's by design.
Do you buy that too? Because you're not a fan of it, but we only have 0.2%.
I mean, so what do you want to do? Lock the unvaccinated away? Because that's what you're basically saying. Is that a portion of the population?
But who is it about? Is it about our tamariki or our kaya?
Enough about the emotional.
No, but-
is it about our
No,
tamariki? It's
but it
about
has to be about emotional.
No,
Because,
it is. It is.
Because while your mokopuna are doing all right in your big section with the chooks and the rest of it.
Oh, get personal.
No, because you've got a really nice home environment. Not everyone has that ability.
Well, maybe they should follow me.
Yeah.
Shane.
Oh, well, look, can I say this? Can I say this? It's not about the emotion. What we do know is that vaccinations work, and it does suppress the really bad effects of COVID. You're less likely to end up in hospital. You're less likely to die. So we know that's a fact, and that works. And
So
that's
those
why,
people who died this week who've been vaccinated.
And that's why mandates work. It suppresses the number. New Zealand, per head of population is at about 0.7. Our nearest neighbour is at about 7%. So, our methodologies work. And, I think one of the ultimate responsibility of our government is to keep our people alive, and that's what this government has achieved.
We're seeing the virus moving south to some of those smaller communities, Kawhia, Otarahanga, Taupo.
Yep.
I think Wairarapa yesterday. Is that a concern, or is this just expected now?
Oh, I think it's washing over the whole of the country. Somehow it's been able to get out, whether it's been through people escaping Auckland. It reminds me of, the movies, Escape from LA. I mean, this is what people do. But it hasn't, Shane is right. In the big scheme of things, if we put this up against what's happened around the world, we're bit players. We don't even appear on the board. So we've only lost 30-odd people to this pandemic. And I've known some of those people who have passed away. It's sad, and it's terribly sad. I feel for everybody out there who's either vaccinated or not vaccinated. And I suppose my view is I just want it to end.
Yeah, me
so we
too.
can get back to being idiots.
Yeah, me too. I want it to end, but we've got to have
It's a marathon.
But we've got to have a methodology to it end. And again, and I don't want to sound like a crack record, but the methodology is increase those vaccination rates, get those boosters going, and also I think we're going to have to practice reasonably safe health habits. Masking, sanitisation, all that sort of thing. And you know what? I think lots of Māori whānau out there, even when the borders are open, they'll be very, and I don't want to use the word hesitant, but they'll be very careful about having Christmas events. We're looking at an unveiling, we're looking at postponing it, even if the borders are open, because we just don't want to take that risk. And people from Tamaki Makaurau that live in Tamaki Makaurau, I don't want to go into a high area in terms of unvaccinated and pass COVID on. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take that responsibility.
That's the rangatiratanga that you can have over your own whānau, right? That
You do. And I mean, that's where rangatiratanga actually starts, is at home. And then you go out into the community, the wider whānau, blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing, which is a worry to Māori. Half of those new cases are Māori.
40%.
And I suppose in one aspect, we're lucky that we have a young population, because the average age of people that are actually getting it is over the age of, I think it's 45 or something like that. And we're a young population. But I'm 61 and I've been double vaxxed. I just can't wait to get my booster. And somebody said to me this morning, oh, it's a booster now. How many times are you going to get a booster? Oh, well, I get it 10 times as long as it keeps me alive.
Yeah. Hey, well, last week we touched on Three Waters, the reform, and the opposition continues from councils around the country. Today we're going to look at the housing intensification scrap. So the government, with support from the opposition, wants to get rid of that single family zoning and bring in the medium density residential. That means that your neighbour, can build 3 houses in a row, 3 stories high, overlooking your chook run. How would the chooks feel about that?
Well, guess what? The people across the road from me, their houses have been sold, and 16 apartments are to appear across the road from me. Now, I don't mind, because I think you've got to fit people in somewhere. And for all these councils who are saying, oh, what a bad idea. Well, you should have built some houses and got the infrastructure right 25 years ago, not just yesterday. So what we're seeing right throughout the country, but particularly in Auckland, is the new look of Aotearoa, where people are going to live a lot closer together, a lot closer to the suburban hub and also to the CBD. So I'm all in favour, as long as the designs aren't shitty. Because that's been, look, I come from Otara, and back in the 60s it was just a fibrillite house. Yuck.
But here's the thing, Ato. Can I just say, here's the thing. There are greater levels of intensification in West Auckland anyway than there are in Central Auckland, than there are in Orake,
Well,
as there are in South Auckland.
Coming from somebody living over on the eastern beaches.
I live in the leafy suburbs of Epsom when the wife doesn't kick me out of the house. But here's the other thing about the hypocrisy of the argument.
What bridge do you look at?
The Libertarian Party act is saying, oh, we want greater control over. But I thought they believed in property rights. Shouldn't the ultimate property right of me be, if I want to build 3 stories up, I should be able to build 3 stories up. It's my land, folks.
Especially in Remuera. I'd love to have
but either you believe, you believe in property rights or you don't.
Quote the ACT Party. David Seymour says it's a hollow stunt, it won't achieve anything. Yet he campaigned on a policy called Build Like the Boomers, which basically allows homeowners to make their own building decisions. Why would he oppose it?
Oh, he's opposing it because there's some sort of... There are legs in this story for those that oppose. I mean, this is the guy that said he can't even afford a house. I mean, on his wages, give me a break. I mean, he got left money and shares in a trust that he forgot about. I wouldn't have forgotten about it. I would have sold the lot. But look, you got to fit people somewhere. This is not going to be the panacea for our kids and our mokos who can't actually afford.
Isn't it? It's 50,000 new houses in 5 years. And I mean, when you look at the sliding home ownership rates of Māori and Pacifica particularly, this could be the winning ticket. Of
course, it's part of the winning ticket. And Crimea River, same politicians say we need to build more houses, and we need to make houses more affordable. Well, one of the mechanisms to do that and to stop people like me who benefit out of flipping homes without paying taxes, capital gain tax. So every mechanism to put poorer people into houses, he opposes. And I think the answer is simply vested interest. If you're on top of the property pile, you want to carry on being on top of the property pile, and you want to kick the ladder out of people that are coming underneath you. And I'm over that.
Yeah, so the new rules are 80% of the space on your property. How many metres do you think is taken up with your whare on your property?
Oh, I mean, if I had the money, I'd be putting a couple more houses on there just for my kids and my mokos. Our neighbours, my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law, that's 3/4 of an acre. We could get 35 houses on there if we wanted to, but where would we go? We would lose that whānau, that community sense. On one hand, I'm not opposed to it. And on the other hand, I like what I got and I'm keeping it and I'm not selling it to anybody.
But the thing is, it's your choice, Saito, and you don't want to take that choice out of others. And that's what this opposition is trying to do. And, there's levels of intensification in West Auckland and in South Auckland that already exists because they're poor areas, and that's where they want poor people to live.
Our organisation have written a submission on the new bill that allows this to happen. Our concern is that, like Shane says, out in South Auckland and in West Auckland, huge intensification. Are there any homes for Māori? Because there's a lot of Māoris that live out in West Auckland, out in South Auckland.
Well, here's the opportunity for Māori to actually live multi-generational with each other on a kāinga.
Yeah, yes. And a bouquet is to Irirangi. I think they're actually going to build houses out of their settlement money for their own people. Yay!
Ka pai, let's move on to our tweet of the week, or whatever you've been listening to. Shane, let's start with you.
The tweet of the week is actually the genre of the tweet of the week, and that's the hate speech that Pākehā with high profile in the past, such as John Ansell, who was the man behind Iwi Kiwi, his rant on Facebook, etc. yesterday, calling COVID vaccination genocide and that he would rather use the needle hanging, that guy needs to be in jail. I want to say, and I'm going to look in the...
He was having a go at a Labour MP.
I want to say, and I want to look in the camera because I want to get this deliberate. If that was a Māori activist saying it, the redneck radio would be all over that today, and the narrative would be very different. I
don't think many Māori would disagree with you there, Shane. Let's go to you, Tau.
I have one from Morgan Godfrey, our brother.
Who's just had a pepe, no mai e te taonga.
Miriama.
This is his tweet. I should announce, baby is here. Miriama Jean, after her auntie Miriama, and Jean after her great-great-grandmother. Another 5 living generation line for our whānau. Hannah and I are so very happy. From me, brother, congratulations.
Welcome another Kawarau baby.
Welcome to the Māori population.
Yes, lovely.
A beautiful tweet for a lovely person who used to be on RNZ quite a few times, so I'm glad you've used your space for that. I think that actually Morgan would agree with my tweet of the week, which is from Mohammed Safa, or Safa, I'm not sure where the macron is. He asks, why is it if you can't pay your rent, buy less lattes, but not if you can't pay your employees, buy fewer yachts? Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. But yeah, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks for tuning in to all of you who have joined us for our second video podcast. We'll be back with more Māori politics and analysis next week with the support of New Zealand On Air's Public Interest Journalism Fund. What are you up to for the weekend?
Gardening, having a good time, and preparing to get out of the lockdown.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely gardening. I have this amazing system where I am about to get some real soil from my compost.
Oh, you're going to recycle
Oh my
this?
God, it's amazing. I'm going to film it.
Film it for us, bring it in. It can be your tweet of the week next week.
It's true.
Yes, I find that in that compost there's a lot of rubbish and then you have to sift through it. But anyway, ka tira ka iri ki runga ngā kōrero o te wā ki ngā paketara o te wharenei o Pāri People. Kei reira, noho ai, hui e te marama, kia hui te ora, hui e taiki e.